You'd be surprised. There's so many people out there, and it's the majority, believe it or not. According to Forbes, 80% of people fail their New Year's resolutions not by the end of the year. 80% of people fail their resolutions by February. And not only by February, but if depending on where you look, it's really more like the second week of January. So by the time you're watching this video, 80% of people are already off the wagon. That means only 20% are still sticking with it. And that's not to count March, April, May, June, the rest of the year. Does that make sense? So the reason why we're doing this now, because you're like, well, New Year's is over. Why are you doing this now and not in December, not some other time? Well, because this is right when most people usually lose their momentum. And this is when people need it most, not when the enthusiasm's at the highest, when it's like December 31st, right? But this is when they need it the most, when the outcomes that they set for themselves, where they were so fired up about it, it's not so new and exciting anymore, right? We want to make sure that this can maintain long term. So what we're going to do here in this workshop of putting it together, it's all about you becoming the best version of you. It's called From Resolutions to Results, how you can become the best version of you, not just for this year, but for this lifetime. So I'm going to pull up my screen share real quick, and you should be able to see that now. And we're going to talk about from resolutions to results, why everything you've heard about goal setting and habits and setting New Year's resolutions has actually been holding you back and might have counterintuitively be setting you up for failure, and how to really break through that instead to live your best life. So this is for you. If you're ready to take your life to the next level this year once and for all, if that's you, comment, that's me, comment next level below. Or this is also for you if you're looking to take command of your life and lead with confidence, purpose, and power in every area of your life. And this is also for you if you're ready to finally break through your old limits and step fully into your potential, not just for this year, but for the rest of your life. And like I told you before, many men, they're stuck in that same cycle year after year where they're frustrated, where they're setting the same goals and not hitting them, or they're overwhelmed by just doing a whole bunch of tasks that they feel like they have to do, but it's not moving the needle forward. It's not actually helping them make progress in any meaningful way. Or they're disappointed because they're in this never-ending cycle and they know they're capable of more, but they're feeling stuck. Or they're worried that this is going to be just another repeat of all those years that came before. Have you ever saw Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray, where every single day he wakes up and it's the same thing and it never changes? Well, some people, right, like they're like they have 10 years of experience, but it's like they've had the same year of experience 10 years in a row. So we want to make sure that that's not you, that you continue to make progress and continue to grow. That's what this is going to be all about. But imagine instead that this year was the year that it all can change. What if this is the year where you finally said, you know, enough is enough. I know I have potential and now it's time to actually live it in my life. Imagine if you could effortlessly surpass your goals, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because they align with who you are at your core. And instead of having to grind harder, it's just who you are naturally. Imagine waking up every day as the best version of yourself who doesn't need to try to be disciplined. You just are because your outcome is aligned with your identity at the core level. Or what if the people around you started noticing the shift, you know, your friends, your family, your children, the people in your life, because they see you operating your life at a whole new level. They see you fully owning yourself and coming into your own. And because of that, you become a natural leader where your team, your clients, the people that are in your life, they look up to you as a leader because you're actually doing it. It's not with just some passing fad like 80% of the people. You're not someone that says something and makes loud declarations, but you actually follow through and you keep your word and you made it happen. They're going to ask, how did you change so much so quickly? What I found is that most men out there, they know there's a version of themselves that they could be if they just get rid of all of the BS, all the limitations that held them back. And there's a lot of talk today about men really stepping in, really owning their lives, becoming the best version of themselves, owning their authentic masculinity. And you'll hear a phrase called high value man. Well, I believe the best definition of a high value man is a man who's in command of the results and the directions of his own life, not just externally, but internally, right? Because I don't have to tell you, the most successful people in the world know that your external reality is just a reflection of what? Your external reality is just a reflection of your internal world, isn't it? And so that's the most important thing. The only question is, how do we get there? How do we get into that place where we have an outcome, we have a goal, and we're effortlessly aligned to it? Well, I don't believe it or not, that you get there by working harder, banging your head against the wall, taking more, actions and habits, establishing more morning routines. I think those things are useful and that's a part of the equation, but I think that's like putting the cart before the horse, or it's like putting a symptom before the root cause. I believe that you have to work hard. I believe that you have to take action. I believe that you have to establish really strong habits. But is it possible to establish all of those things and still not get the result that you're after? Yes or no? Yeah. Is it possible that, I'll give you an example. Let's say one of your outcomes is to make more money and you win the lottery. Is it possible that despite the lottery winnings, that in a couple years' time, you could have spent all the money, lost it, and been either in the same spot you started in or end up in a worse position? And if you actually look it up, they've followed people that have done this before, that have won the lottery. They followed up with them long term, and that's actually more common than you'd think, because it's not the thing itself that gets you the result that you want. If you don't believe that you're the type of person that can do that in the first place, you'll sabotage your results. So all of the hard work, all of the actions, all of the habits, all of that stuff in general is a great piece of the puzzle. But if it's not aligned with who you are internally, you'll take action and then you'll stop. You'll be two steps forward, one step back. Does that make sense? And so I believe you get results by focusing not on resolutions, not on habits, not on banging your head against the wall, by working smarter, not harder. I believe we got to focus on the result and not the resolution. And we do that by focusing on who we must become to achieve it in the first place. Now, I told you 80% of people failed their resolutions by February, or really more like the second week of January. According to the top, according to Forbes, the top resolutions, what do you think they are? Right there on the screen is make more money. They want to get out of debt, make more money. They want to lose weight. They want to improve their relationships. But take a moment and think, what do all of those things have in common? What do all of those things have in common? Make more money, get out of debt, lose weight, improve relationships. Comment in the comment section below. What do they all have in common? Well, the thing that they all have in common is they're all about doing something. They're all focused on things. They're all focused on actions, or they're task oriented. And if you've ever heard of be, do, have, right? You got to be who you're supposed to be, do the things you're meant to do, have the things you want to have. They're focused on the doing and the having and not on the being. And so it's actually time to commit not just to the things that you want, but who must you become to achieve it? And instead of focusing on the end result, if we focus on the process of becoming that person in the first place and address the deeper level identity, that's going to make your success and your outcomes and your achievements so much more sustainable long term. Does that make sense? Do you follow what I'm saying? There's a famous philosopher called Carl Jung. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it's going to direct your life and you're going to call it fate. And that's the case that's happening in a lot of people's situations. That's why most people are failing their New Year's resolutions, not because they don't consciously want what they say they want, not because they're not putting the work in, but because their unconscious and their conscious mind, they're not aligned. Anytime there's a goal or an outcome that you want and you're not getting it, either that means consciously you want it and unconsciously you're trying to protect yourself, or there's an unconscious block somewhere, or there's internal self-sabotage, or there's an inner conflict. And we're going to talk about that here in this workshop. So now's the best time because, they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is when? Right now. So let's not wait. Let's not make it like Groundhog's Day year after year. Bill Murray got out of Groundhog's Day when he finally learned the lesson and he became what? He became the person he was meant to become. And then it's like everything unlocked for him and it was easy. And then he got the girl and he lived happily ever after in that movie Groundhog's Day. The longer we wait to address this, the underlying blocks, they're just going to continue to hold you back. And so we want to make sure you learn the lesson. And if we can create a strong foundation right now, we can set you up for success in the next couple months, right? Like really in the next few months, if you can really take a couple of actions now and commit to it, it'll set you up for the rest of your life. And today's outcome, by the end of today, What we're going to cover is number one, why most goal setting, why most New Year's resolutions fail, and what you can do instead to make sure that doesn't happen to you. Number two is what's the one thing that's even more powerful than having that outcome, than having that goal? It's your identity and how that secretly could be derailing your progress. And then number three, we're going to cover why people, even with the right tools, even with the right mindset, even with the right, setting outcomes or knowing they need to become who they need to become, why that might still be a challenge for them, why they might still fail, and how to clear any of those internal conflicts, any of those roadblocks from your past, so that way you can live your full potential. Now, you might be asking, why am I sharing this with you? It's because that was me. That was this situation was me. I was the guy. I would say today's the day. Today's the day it's going to all turn around. This is going to be the year it all turns around. And it wasn't just New Year's. I would do this on a random Thursday. And my girlfriend would roll her eyes at me. She said, "Oh, you Mr. Declaration. You're making a loud proclamation of what you're going to do." And it sounded great, but I would get all this accolades, or at least I'd feel really good for declaring that I was going to change something, but I didn't actually take the action. And she'd roll her eyes and be like, "Okay, another time you're going to declare it." And I would make progress, or I'd stick with it for a month tops. Most often it was like a week or two, and then, it's like object permanence, out of sight, out of mind, or just the momentum, that initial enthusiasm would wear off. I'd make these loud declarations and nothing would happen. Can you relate to that? Has that ever happened to you occasionally? Right? But the problem was I knew I was made for more. And I knew that I had so much more potential than I was really living. And I believe that's the truth for most men. Most men out there believe that there's a version of themselves they really could be, but for some reason they're not demonstrating that, either because there's an inner conflict, or there's fear, or they don't believe they're the person that deserves to get it, or there's some unconscious conditioning in the way. But if they could just get rid of that mental block, if they could just step into who they're meant to be, they know there's a whole other level available for them. And even if they're doing really well, even if they're like to other people that are 10 out of 10, they might feel compared to what they're capable of, they're not fully stepping into it. And I think that's one of the biggest things that men fear, is they're fearing that they're not gonna fulfill their full potential, right? And that was happening to me. And it's not that I wasn't committed. I was committed to my growth, but I would be learning all this more information. I would be, burying my head in books. I'd be doing the morning routines and changing my habits and changing my action and making declarations and, pounding my chest and pumping myself up. But it wouldn't last long term no matter what I tried, and I wasn't fulfilled. And I would even try to do things like change my circumstance. I changed my environment. So I'll give you an example. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have recognized me. I had ended up 80 pounds overweight. I was close to six figures in debt. My biggest client stopped paying me. I got massively in debt and I ended up divorced, depressed, overweight, living in my parents' spare condo, hiding from an 80-year-old woman because I wasn't 65 and I wasn't supposed to be there because it was a retirement community. It wasn't where you want to be in your early 30s, right? Especially if you're trying to get back on your feet. Um, I thought, though, that by changing my environment, I thought that, okay, my life's not working the way it wants to. It must be, I've tried the habits, I've tried the seminars, I've tried the workshops, I've read all the books. It's got to be the circumstance that I'm in. I got to change the marriage. So I got out of the relationship and I changed my environment and I changed where I lived. The only problem is no matter where you go with you. And I finally hit rock bottom, and it's 3 a.m. and I'm just staring at the wall, and I'm the only person there, and I'm just hearing the clock tick, and it's just ticking. And you ever have that moment where you just can't sleep, and you're just stuck awake, and you're just thinking, and you're like, how the heck did I get here? Or I got to turn something around, or even if it's not nearly that bad, like I know I'm made for more. Why am I not able to make it happen? And I had an important discovery. What I realized that every result that I had, positive or negative, there's really only one common denominator. It was me. It was my actions. So the actions that I took or failed to take was leading to my result. And every action that I took was coming from a belief about myself. But really, that belief about myself was really more about a belief about who I believed I was. It was my identity. And every belief came from my past conditioning. Does that make sense? Everything that I was believing about myself, about my identity, was from the past. And I realized my conditioning was all in my unconscious autopilot. And so I realized that I was actually, even though I consciously wanted results, I consciously wanted to improve my life, and I was doing the actions and habits to make it happen, it was very difficult for me to sustain long term because I wasn't taking the action because I had negative beliefs about myself and about my identity that all came from my past conditioning. And so what I was doing was I was projecting the future, I was projecting the past out into the future. And I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. I was living a life based on unconscious autopilot. Does that make sense? And it was very hard to overcome that. Comment in the chat if you can relate or if that makes sense, or if you've ever experienced something similar to that before. And I realized what the real challenge is wherever you go with you, no matter what. And so it's not always the doing. It's not always the habits or the actions. It's really what's running you. What's running you unconsciously is the most important thing. And it's got way less to do with the things that you do and way more to do with who you believe you are. I believe it's like 20% actions, habits, and behaviors, and the other 80% is your purpose, your destination, your identity, who you believe you are, and your mindset. So you might have heard it said before, it's like 80% psychology, 20% mechanics, 20% strategy. The psychology and the mindset and the purpose and your identity is a huge portion of this. And so when this shifted, when I understood that all of this was coming from my unconscious and it was autopilot, you still have to put some work in, right? Because you got to go to the gym, lose weight, make money, go to work, improve your relationships, right? But I was no longer beating myself up anymore. I was no longer having an internal conflict or tug of war, and I was no longer fighting against myself. I was no longer pushing a boulder up a hill. And very, very rapidly, in the next 12 to 18 months, I lost 80 plus pounds. I got in the best shape since college. I generated six figures plus in revenue that year and every year since in my job and then later in my business. And I've transformed my relationships into, one of polarity and really growing together and really becoming the best versions of ourselves together. It's a catalyst for our growth. And I've been invited to speak about my transformation on some of the biggest stages in the world, both here in the US and internationally. And it's been very humbling. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm not doing this for internet credit, but I just want to share with you. I went from literally rock bottom to the exact opposite in 12 to 18 months because of a few shifts. And it's all because I changed the way I operated at a deep core level. And I want to give you the keys to doing that here today, so that way you can have the same result. I really want to help you. And so the truth is, you don't become the man that you're meant to be by forcing yourself to do stuff, by forcing yourself to do habits or a new routine. You can, that's the old way to do it, but it's brute force. And brute force will wear you out. Brute force will burn you out long term, and it's not a sustainable strategy. You become the version of yourself by, number one, addressing the root cause of what's preventing you in the first place, clearing it to the best of your ability, and then aligning your purpose, your identity, and your beliefs. And then aligning those three things with what you actually do. And when that's aligned, it's like it's not like a building on a faulty foundation anymore. It's like the foundation's solid, and then you can build up a lot higher. Does that make sense? So that's what we're going to cover here today. The top three outcomes that we're going to work on here today is number one, how to stop setting outcomes incorrectly and how to align them instead to live your purpose every single day. Number two, we're going to show you how to avoid chasing goals by becoming the person you're meant to be and who achieves them effortlessly by aligning your outcomes with your identity. And number three, how do you eliminate self-sabotage that's holding you back, right? So you might know what to do. You might consciously want something, but you might unconsciously be sabotaging yourself. Well, how do we remove that, remove the internal resistance to make this a reality and make it stick long term? So that's what we're going to cover here today. And so pull out a paper and a pen, pull out a notepad, take some notes on Google Docs or whatever, and we're gonna get through this here. We're gonna do it here together. So key number one is how do you stop setting outcomes incorrectly? Well, consider this for a moment. What if the reason you're not achieving your goals isn't about willpower or discipline, but what if that's because you're setting the wrong outcomes to begin with, where your goals have accidentally set you up to fail without you even realizing, without you even knowing? Because when it comes to setting goals, most people, they set vague goals or they focus more on what they don't want than what they actually do want. Believe it or not. Everybody can tell me what they don't want, but it's very rare that they share with me, here's what I want specifically. Or they feel stuck. They're spinning their wheels without making any meaningful progress because they're doing tasks, they're doing to-dos, but it's not linked up to a higher purpose or a bigger vision. They're just getting the things that are kind of urgent and in their environment out of the way just to check them off a box. Or just to feel productive, but busy is not productive. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like the activity is not leading anywhere. Or number three, they get easily distracted or burnt out because there's no emotional pull. What happens so often is people set a goal not because they're motivated for the goal, but they're motivated by not wanting to not have the goal. I'll put it in a different way to make it easier to understand. Some people want success not to be successful. Some people want success to avoid failure. Some people want to be healthy not because they want to be healthy, but they want to be healthy to avoid feeling unhealthy. And so that can be a very powerful motivation, but it's not pulling you forward. It's you having to push, and that's you having to fight against yourself. Anytime your motivation is primarily moving away from something to get out of not failing or to get out of feeling unhealthy or get out of, I don't want to be lonely, so I want to have a relationship. Anytime it's a moving away from, it'll sustain your motivation just long enough to not feel the pressure anymore. And once the pressure's gone, the motivation kind of flatlines. So if your motivation to make money is to not be poor, you'll make just enough where you feel safe to pay your bills and not too much more. Do you follow what I'm saying? So they get distracted or burnt out because there's no pull. They're just doing actions to get out of pain. Or then finally, they might do a bunch of random tasks or actions to keep them busy, but it's not moving the needle forward. It's not helping them to feel fulfilled in any meaningful way. So key number one here for this first section, we want to know what we want, not what we don't want. And what I mean by knowing what we want, not what we don't want, is people have a much easier time describing to me what they're trying to get away from. I'll ask somebody, hey, what do you want in terms of your outcome? Well, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And that makes sense, right? But it doesn't define an outcome. The outcome itself is vague. So what we want to figure out is what do you actually want, not what you don't want. Because if you know what you don't want, that's fine. But if you're driving a car and then you're focused on where you don't want to go, what's like you're gonna fall into traffic or you're gonna not be in the lines, right? That's gonna be problems. So you want to make sure that you're focused towards what you want and not on what you don't want. Number two in this first key is the most successful people in the world focus on their desired outcome, not on the obstacles. So what they're doing, there's a friend of mine. If you ever read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, there's like the rich dad and the poor dad, and this guy, he was listening more to his rich dad's, his friend's rich dad for his money beliefs. And that was like that with me. I had like when I was first coming up in my career and in my business, I wasn't very wealthy. I didn't really have it figured out, but I had some friends that were doing really, really well. And there was one friend in particular, he was very wealthy, very successful. And I noticed something weird about him at first, but the more I got to know him, the more I realized it was intentional and it wasn't weird. He never talked about what he didn't want, and he never talked about the problem. He was constantly wording things in the way that he wanted them to happen. And he was constantly wording things in the positive. And at first I'd roll my eyes and be like, man, you're like, nobody talks that way, right? You're a personal development robot. Like stop being like a drone. Stop being like blindly positive. And you can't argue with results. He was getting results I wasn't getting. And what I've actually found is the most successful people in the world, they're constantly focused on their desired outcome. They're constantly wording things as if it's working out. And there's very, very little beating themselves up. There's very, very little doubt in their words. There's very little focus on what they don't want. They spend maybe 90% of the time on the solution and maybe 10% on the problem just to identify it and kind of be realistic about it. Does that make sense? So the most successful people focus on their desired outcome, not on the problems. And then so number three, we want to focus our language on the here and now and not someday. It might sound like a little bit of semantics. I'm going to get into it in a moment, but the way you word your outcome is very important because it could set you up for success or failure without you knowing it. So here's how to do this. Number one is we want to define your ultimate outcome or your purpose. Instead of knowing what you don't want, we want to figure out, what do I want specifically in this area? You've probably heard of this before. There's SMART format: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time specific. We want to know, what do you want specifically? So not just more money, but a number, right? Like what would that actually mean to you? Not just a better relationship, but how would you know that you've achieved it? So that's important. Find out what you want, but also how would you know that you've achieved it specifically. So get a really clear outcome. What do you want? What do you want specifically? Make it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time specific. And then the second part of this, once you have the outcome, ask yourself, why do I want this? By identifying a few things. If I were to achieve it, what would that mean to you? If you achieve it, what's that going to feel like? Who are you going to become because you've achieved it? And finally, what does it mean, or how will it help others? Because maybe you've noticed you'll oftentimes do more for others than you will for yourself. You'll oftentimes have way more motivation to do something for a loved one or for a friend than you will even for yourself. So identify, why do you want it? What's it mean to you? What's it going to feel like? Who do you become? And most importantly, what does it mean to others in your life? Or how's it going to feel or help other people for you to do this? That's going to give you an emotional pull towards your outcome, not just a vague, I want to make more money. I think it would be cool. I don't want to be a failure. But it's going to be specifically, I want to create this type of life by this time. Here's how we're doing it, and here's what that's going to mean to me. Here's what it's going to feel like. Here's how it's going to help the people in my life or others. It makes it much more tangible and much more real, and it's going to pull you more emotionally. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we want to refine our language to be like the most successful people in the world. Language doesn't describe reality, it creates it. You might be asking what that means. One of my mentors told me that. He says language doesn't describe reality, it actually creates it. And he told me a study. He said anxiety or anxiousness or fear versus anticipation and excitement, they're actually the same emotion. They're very similar. Have you ever heard that before? But he goes, what changes it is the label. And they put electrodes on somebody's brain. And it's basically the same chemical. Like, so the chemical happens first in the brain, and it's an impulse. And then the person either labels it fear, anxiety, or excitement, anticipation. And whatever that person labels it, that's the emotion they begin to feel. So believe it or not, your language doesn't describe reality. In some cases, it's creating it. And so instead of saying, I want, say something like, I'm so grateful that I've already achieved the goal. Because put it this way, what is wanting? What is wanting implies what? Wanting implies you don't have something. It's like a desire. There's nothing wrong with desire, but the energy of want is lack, isn't it? Can it be? But gratitude, I read a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. And it's not really about money, it's more about psychology and the way that you think to yourself. And it was saying, all the personal development people say to use gratitude, and they say it so often it almost sounds like you roll your eyes, like, okay, be grateful. It's almost like a cheesy thing that people say. But the reason why is because you can only be grateful for something that you've already received. Grateful implies you already have something, or you're full of something, or you're not in lack. Want implies scarcity. Gratitude implies abundance. So if you're wanting something, it's striving. If you're grateful for, you're living in abundance. Does that make sense? So we want to change the phrasing as best you can to be more on the grateful side. And so you want to avoid phrases that push it into the future, like by next year, by next week. Put it in the present. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I am now starting my business by next year. Well, next year, you read the goal, I'm now starting my business by next year. Like it's still right? It keeps pushing it back. So you say, I'm now starting my business. It's in the present. I am now starting my business by December 31st, right? You put the time on it. So it's stated in the present, it's stated now, while also having a specific end date. Do you follow? And so you want to speak and act as if it's already achieved and use I am to make it even stronger. So I am now doing this. I am now so grateful that I've done this by this time. So that's one way. Also, listen to the energy behind what words really mean. We talked about how wanting implies not having. We talked about how someday implies not today. Well, more money could mean $1. A better relationship could just mean slightly less fights, So be really specific. Like, what would happen? How would you know that you've achieved the goal? Or if you know what you don't want, how would you know that the problem's disappeared? And put that down specifically. And we talked about how gratitude implies already having or knowing that it's done. And then finally, we want to connect your actions to your greater purpose. So what people do sometimes is they have this big grand vision and they're nowhere near it, but they have a really big goal, a really big outcome, and it's almost like overwhelming to them. And they sometimes won't start because it's almost like it's so big I can't do it. What you want to do is you want to take that big vision and chunk it down into small, easily achievable wins. I had to lose over 80 pounds, and to lose it all at once would have been a lot. And if, you lose a couple pounds here and there, it would have felt like molasses, quite frankly. But if you focus on losing like 4 or 5 pounds at a time, it becomes easy. So you're stacking the small wins, you're stacking the small goals over time. I remember, thinking about, I'm now going to get in better shape. And I go to the gym, try to do it for like 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. You burn out, don't you? But when I was like, I'm just going to go to the gym one time this week for 5 minutes. It's such a lame goal, by the way, one time for 5 minutes. I go in, do a set of curls, leave. But you know what happens? You go in and 5 minutes is easy. So you stay for 10. And you're like, well, one day was easy, so you go for two. Instead of trying to eat the whole thing at once, you make it so dumb, so small that you're like guaranteed to succeed. And then that is like, oh, well, that was easy. And you do more. It's better to have a small win and then do it and then build success than set something gigantic and then not do it because it's insurmountable. So what you want to start doing is start to make and keep really small promises to yourself. So make and keep really, really small promises to yourself. Number one, that's going to start to build self-trust that you're an action taker. And then number two, that's going to build emotional muscle over time because you're constantly pushing yourself just past your edge and not way beyond it where you're going to freak out and then not do it or self-sabotage, but you're doing it incrementally. So it's like when you go to the gym, you lift 5 pounds and then you heal and then you can lift 10, then you can lift 15. You're not going to be able to get your end goal immediately in most cases, but you can get the first step. And by the time you get the first step, you're stronger. And then eventually you'll be able to take on the final boss of the video game or the final dragon. Does that make sense? And so really simple, like one time a week for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the gym. I'm only going to save, 5% of my paycheck and put it in savings. But those small wins over time will add up to major wins and they're going to compound. Who here follows what I'm talking about? Okay, awesome. So a note about your motivation to change. We talked about this before. Most people set goals that sound really good. Like I want to be healthy. I want to be successful. I want to have this achievement. But the challenge happens because their motivation comes from a desire to avoid pain. Like they want success to avoid failure. They want their health to avoid being sick or unattractive. They want to achieve something to avoid rejection or disappointment, right? They want a relationship to avoid being lonely. That can happen. And that is a motivator, right? Like pain is a powerful motivator. But if you're only motivated by pain, you'll do just enough to get out of the pain and then it'll stop. If you're motivated for health because you don't want to be fat anymore or you don't want to be heavy, you'll lose just enough to like get to a place where you feel comfortable and then your motivation will neutralize and then you'll start. That's why you have yo-yo dieters too. That's why you have people that like go 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, right? Because they're getting out of pain. So one of the first things I like to do when people come to me, the first thing we do is we figure out what they really want in life, what's most important to them, health, success, achievement, whatever it is, relationships, and then we find their motivation. And then we find out, is it moving towards or away from? And if it's mostly away from, the first thing we do is we get to the root cause of that and shift it because we want you to have sustained motivation that's pulling you towards it, not just getting you out of pain, right? Because then it's like the second you're out of pain, it kicks off. It's like the air conditioner metaphor, right? Once if it gets above a certain temperature, it starts to come down again. But likewise, it's the flip. If it gets too low, the burners come on and push it back up. If you're motivated away from pain, the second you're out of pain, all of the thrust comes down. Does that make sense? So we want to eliminate that first. If you need some help with that, reach out. I'll help you with that real quickly. So let's do a self-assessment on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is I am totally a master at my outcomes. I'm totally a master at like knowing how to word things and having it pull me emotionally towards what I want. And I have no moving away from motivation at all. And 1 is I'm really struggling with it. Just comment where you think you are. Where do you think you are now? And if you were to master this area of your life, what would that do for you? If you really got this handled, if you were moving towards what you wanted, not away from what you didn't want, if you knew how to word it, if you were grateful for it, if you're living from a place of abundance instead of scarcity, if you were making and keeping small promises to yourself, what would that do for you long term? So go ahead, comment in the comment section below or in the chat. And so key number 2 is the reason why most people fail is they're focused on doing. They're doing tasks and habits and actions. But what if the reason you're stuck isn't a lack of effort, but it's because you're not believing you're the person who can actually achieve it in the first place? There's a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. Maxwell Maltz is the author. He says you can't outperform your self-concept. You can't outperform your self-concept. You've heard the phrase before, if you believe you can or can't, you're right. This is more than a belief. Your identity is the strongest held belief about yourself. And so you're only going to get what you believe is possible for you. Your identity is almost like what you'll accept for yourself. Does that make sense? So why would somebody not do the thing they really want to do, even though they want to do it? They might not think they deserve it yet, or they might not think they're the type of person that can make it happen. The benefits of aligning your outcome with your identity is, first of all, you're going to be naturally pulled towards success rather than forcing it. If it's aligned to your identity, you're not going to have to force it because it's just who you are naturally. Your habits are going to align with who you believe yourself to be, which creates momentum. And you're not just going to hit your goals, you're going to be someone that lives in alignment with them every single day. And you're going to move forward without needing to have the how figured out because it's aligned with your identity at a core level. And it becomes so much easier, right? Like, let me ask you, is it easier to say, I am a healthy person versus I'm trying to eat healthy a little bit, right? Or I am a vegetarian. I'm not saying that I am, right? But if I am a vegetarian versus I'm trying to eat more healthy, or I am a non-smoker versus I'm trying to quit. The identity has so much more power, doesn't it? So what typically happens though is there's an internal resistance where, and you'll even hear it in the language, a part of me wants something, but a part of me doesn't. A part of me is motivated, but a part of me is lazy. And there's almost like this internal tug of war or conflict going on. Or there'll be inconsistent progress because even if there's not an alignment, it's going to be like that pendulum swing, like a part of me does, a part of me doesn't. You'll make progress and then you'll have a setback. And it'll be this perpetual loop, this never-ending, hamster wheel. Or you'll be overwhelmed and burned out because you have unrealistic expectations and you're trying to do your way to success, but it's not aligned with you internally. So you're forcing it, or you're self-sabotaging because you always by default match your current level of self-perception, your self-concept. So it's like that's the thermostat. If you're trying to make more money and you're like, well, I'm not a wealthy person, it'll bring you right back down to where you think where it matches up with your identity. They've followed up with lottery winners before. Someone wins mega millions or the jackpot, they win $1 million on the lottery. In a very short amount of time, they lose all the money and they go back to where they were, or even worse than before. Why is that? Because it wasn't the circumstance, it wasn't the money, it was the identity. You take someone that goes, I'm not a wealthy person, it's not who I am. You give them all the money in the world, they'll find a way to confirm who they believe they are. And that's why that happens, because the identity itself never upgraded. Or you'll have like a cycle of success and stagnation of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because that's creating that invisible ceiling. Your identity is creating that invisible ceiling that you can't get past. So I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman that I worked with. He was a pilot, but he wasn't just the pilot, he was the captain. And so he was the captain that was in charge of all the other people on the fleet there, and he had to be the man. Like so he was the captain of all the pilots, and he had to make sure everybody was safe, and he was on top of stuff, and he was really in command of the situation. Does that make sense? But then he goes, I have a problem. I go home and I'm like a pushover, and I have nice guy syndrome, and my wife walks all over me, and my kids don't respect me. And it was really interesting. It's like he was only really being this version of himself at work. But I'm like, is that fake though? Like aren't you really the captain? He's like, yeah. I go, well, what would happen if you brought the captain home? Because it's not fake it till you make it. Those attributes in him are really him. He just thought it was only appropriate to use that version of himself when he's on the airline. But he didn't stop to think like, oh, maybe those resources that I have when I'm the captain could come in really handy at home. Not to be domineering, right? But to be the guy that's like, you know what, honey, I'm owning my space. I got it handled. I got everything taken care of. I can make sure we're safe. I got the plan. Like that type of guy with that energy of ownership. He wasn't bringing that home. And I'm like, what would happen if you bring the captain home? And it transformed his relationship, just leaning into an identity that he already had, but in a slightly different context. I'll share with you where I got this from. I used to be a pro wrestler. So jumping off the top rope, smash people with chairs. That's a picture of me. That's me wrestling Booker T. He's a former multi-time heavyweight champion, and he's a Hall of Famer. And it was a tryout match for me. It was one of the biggest matches of my career. But right before this match happened, my girlfriend at the time called me up and she broke up with me. And I was depressed. And I'm like, how am I going to have this match with this guy? So I'm backstage, I'm depressed, my shoulders are slumped, and I'm like really moping around, and my friends can't console me, and it was bad. It was like I might as well listen to a soundtrack called The Great Depression. It was really, really bad. And I think I actually had the mixed, like I had the burnt CD called The Great Depression, and it was all these like sad, mopey emo songs, right? I think we've all gone through that phase, maybe, or maybe I speak for myself. But anyway, my friends were like, "How are you going to wrestle this guy? Like he's a Hall of Famer. You know, you're not doing too good." Well, wrestlers have a theme song. And so they started playing my theme song, and I started getting ready. And so I'm jumping up and down, I'm slapping my chest. I'm like, yes, here we go. Come on, let's go. And I walked through the curtain, and I got in that emotional state, and my shoulders were back, my head was up, I was focused, I was like present, and I was the most confident guy in the world for 20 minutes. I could feel no pain. Like I was just the man. And then I went backstage, and there's a curtain. There's like a curtain that divides the crowd and the ring to the locker room. And I went through the curtain, and it was like going through a little waterfall, you know? And all of a sudden, like as the curtain draped over my shoulders slumped, my head went down, and I started being mopey again. But it was an instantaneous shift. We don't always have the luxury of catching this. It was so dramatic and so fast that I caught it. And I go, wait a minute, I wasn't depressed literally 5 seconds ago, and now I am. What changed? It was my posture, how I was holding myself, what I was focused on. And I go, I made it appropriate for me to be confident in the ring, but I haven't made it appropriate for me to be confident backstage. Why is that? Interesting. Because I thought I was putting on a fake wrestling character. But I go, is the wrestling character fake? Well, I don't really walk around smash people with chairs every day, right? I'm not really a Bollywood action hero. That was my wrestling. They wanted me to be a Bollywood action hero, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of India. I'm not even Indian. I'm Lebanese, right? But that's how wrestling operates, right? But I'm like that. I might not really be an action hero from Bollywood, but like that persona that comes out and holds his shoulders back, I'm like, that's not fake, right? That it would have to be a real version of me for me to access it. And even with Hollywood actors and people that are the most successful in the field, it's like people that do that, they find the version of themselves that's really them. They find an aspect of themselves and they turn the dial up. And I go, there's nothing wrong about walking with your shoulders back and your head up and feeling confident and focused on the positive. And I go, what if I took the wrestling character that's out there and brought him back here? Not the gimmick, not the Bollywood thing, but can I walk in with confidence with my shoulders back to the gym? Can I walk around and believe that, I'm the man, not in a selfish way, but in a self-confident way when I'm going to the bank? No, why do I got to mope around all day? You know? And I realized, I go, really, it's your identity is a decision. And your identity, like who you believe you are, is like the sum total of all of your past conditioning. And when I was wrestling in the ring, I let all of my conditioning go because I was just focused on playing the character, right? But when I went backstage, I'm like, oh, well, like time to be me again. And I'm like, your identity is a decision. So if you let go of all of the baggage from the past, you can actually really step into the best version of yourself. Now, it sounds like semantics. It sounds like, oh, you're just going to fake it till you make it. That was what I thought back then. As we get a little bit further down this lesson, down this series, you're going to understand what I mean. It's not fake it till you make it. There's a way that you can actually embody the best version of yourself unconsciously because you're getting rid of all of the stuff that tells you that you're not. Does that make sense? I'll get into that later. Becoming attractions. This isn't about just like trying to convince yourself you're somebody else. There's a method behind this. I'm going to explain it momentarily. But when this isn't aligned, there's this tug of war. Because I'll share with you, even in this, like, oh, there's the wrestling me and there's the backstage me. Imagine what happens if you're in a rowboat and one boat is going forward, one oar is going forward, and the other guy's going backwards. You're going to circle, you're going to not go anywhere, right? Imagine if you're doing a tug of war and you're right in the middle and you're both equally strong, it's just going to be stuck right, and nobody's going to win. And that's what happens. Like a lot of times you're like, well, a part of me is confident. A part of me is unconfident. A part of me believes I deserve it. A part of me doesn't. And as long as you have like this inner conflict, you're going to go two steps forward, one step back. You're going to beat yourself up. You're going to be gridlocked. Does that make sense? We got to resolve the internal conflict in your identity. So how do we do that? We got to figure out number one, we have to define who that is. So ask yourself, who is the version of me who's already having this result? How do they think? How do they feel? How do they act? And write a clear vision of who you would need to become to achieve your goal. And then take your desired outcome and turn that into an identity. Most people take their circumstances and turn it into an identity. They're going through a bad patch of luck. Oh, I am a failure. I am fat. I am unsuccessful. Well, that's not an identity, that's a circumstance. But they make it into their identity and they lock it in place. Flip it instead. What helped me, I was 80 pounds overweight, but there was a period of time when I was wrestling. I go, I am a bodybuilder again. I am a wrestler again. And the beliefs and the action started to align with the identity. I started to take action automatically based on the identity. Does that make sense? I am a non-smoker is much more strong than I'm trying to quit. I am a wealthy person is much more better than I'm not good with money. My family's never been good with money. I'm trying my best. The identity is strong. And then what you start to do, this is the first step. There's another step to make this real, but the first step is we got to start stepping in and embodying it. There's like a mental rehearsal. And if it sounds weird, Arnold Schwarzenegger, guys, like the greatest bodybuilder of all time, and then he moved to the country, into the United States, became a major action star, and then not only that, he became the governor of California, right? Like this guy in the book Encyclopedia of a Bodybuilder, he wrote that he won Mr. Olympia 1,000 times before he ever stepped on stage once. And there's the Encyclopedia of a Bodybuilder. That's the big giant workout book. There's a book called The Education of a Bodybuilder. That's his autobiography that he wrote years ago. And he talks about his psychology. In Education of a Bodybuilder, he says he won Mr. Olympia 1,000 times in his mind before he ever stepped on stage once. And he stepped in and he looked through his own eyes and he felt what he was feeling and he heard what he was hearing and he made it vivid. And then he took on those characteristics and he felt those emotions and he embedded them into his nervous system. And because he was so convinced it was real, his body followed, his actions followed. So that's the first step is to really visualize it. Who do you have to become? Visualize it as if it's real, turn it into an identity. That's the first step. So align your beliefs. If I were that person, what would he believe? How would he carry himself? How would he walk around? What would be the actions that he would take? And so that's step one. That's the conscious stepping into it. But we also want to get rid of the baggage that's holding you back from being that in the first place. So I'll share that in a moment. But so most people struggle to achieve their goals because they're focusing on what they need to do instead of who they need to become. But even if they're focusing on who they need to become, they might be out of alignment somewhere and it's creating this internal resistance, like you're constantly fighting against yourself. I want to share with you how this works. This is called the 7 levels of self-mastery. This is what I reverse engineered to figure out how I turn my life around. And so what most people do, they live according to their environment and their conditioning. So what happened to them in the past becomes autopilot. Their conditioning and their environment determines what they do with their habits, their behaviors. They're just doing what they've always done. And then they believe, well, that's what I have access to, my education, the money, the time. This is what my parents did. It affects their resources, the area I grew up in. That's their skills, resources, knowledge, right? What they have access to. And then their early conditioning and their habits and all of this stuff, maybe an event happened to them, they're holding on to emotions from the past. And that all affects their beliefs and what they value as important, and it determines who they believe they are. So their identity, all of this stuff is just based on unconscious conditioning from the past. Do you follow what I mean? But we want to flip that. We want to live from the mission first, your purpose first, align it with the identity, align your mindset and beliefs with that, and then step into that person as a state, your emotional state that makes this stuff happen automatically. Then you can do the habits and all that stuff that will work. But here's what happens. Most people, their mission or their purpose is vague, or they know what they don't want, but they don't know what they do want, or their identity, a part of me wants A, but a part of me wants B. I feel like I could be that person, but I don't really feel like I am. It's that internal conflict. Or they have limiting beliefs, or there's a value conflict. Let's say they value success, but they also value relationship. But success means they need to do stuff in their career. Could there be a conflict? Could they value relationship, but also value freedom? Right? So there could be a conflict there. So there could be limiting beliefs or a values conflict, or their energy has a blockage where there's a trapped negative emotion. Something happened. There's anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and shame bringing them back down, holding them back like an anchor. And that's affecting them here. Most people, they try to keep taking action. They try to learn more. They try to get more resources. Or they try to change their environment. I'm going to change jobs, change careers, change relationships. But this becomes an endless loop. I'm trying to do more. It doesn't work. So I got to learn more. I learned more. I need to take more action. That's not working. Okay, crap. I got to change my environment. Oh man, I changed my environment. The same stuff happened again. Wherever you go with you. So this stuff right here, remember we said 80% is psychology, 20% is the what to actually do. This here, these top four is the 80%. This bottom 20 is that's the doing portion of it, right? So if you want to have a workshop, a worksheet, comment 7 levels, and I'll send you the 7 levels of self-mastery worksheet, and you can figure out for yourself what is my 7 levels now, and what type of life am I getting now based on this? And if I were living my ideal life, what could it be? And you can compare and contrast and actually design this on purpose right there on paper. So comment 7 levels, and I'll send you the worksheet. And when you align those 7 levels, clients, when I work with clients with this, because I help them with this first thing, they start to make effortless progress and their identity drives their actions. And they have a greater confidence and clarity and purpose because they're aligned with who they're meant to be. And they have a sense of ease and flow because they're no longer fighting themselves. And this is a real deep, lasting transformation because it's happening at a deep identity level, not just with the how to. Does that make sense? So let's do a self-assessment on a scale of 1 to 10. If 10 is the best, you're living that true identity, and 1 is like nowhere near it. What number are you at right now? And what would it mean to you? How would it help? What would happen if you actually began to step into who you're meant to be? Go ahead, write that down now. Take a quick self-assessment, comment in the comment section of the chat. And then so finally, number 3 is once you know your outcome and align your identity, what if the real reason you're stuck isn't about what you're doing or even who you're becoming, but we just got to get rid of all of the unconscious baggage that you haven't let go of yet? There's a metaphor that says you have a rocket ship or a jetpack attached to your back and a bungee cord, or in that case, there's a ball and chain. And so what this guy's trying to do, he's trying to fly, he's trying to apply thrust to the jetpack, but he's tied down by this ball and chain, so it's going to yank him back. He can't go that far. Does that make sense? who you are now is the sum total of your past conditioning and your beliefs about the future. So think of a GPS. The GPS has to know where you are now and then also where you want to go. Well, depending on the destination, it changes the route, doesn't it? So if you believe you're driving to a dead end, it's going to change the direction. Versus if you believe you're driving to an awesome destination, it's going to change the direction. It's going to go through the obstacles and everything. Who you are right now is your past conditioning plus what you believe about the future. And so right here, there's the past. This guy's trying to walk forward, but he's got a chain tied to his ankle, and it's a ball and chain to all of the conditioning about the past, the beliefs, the emotional events, the things that happened to him, the limiting conditioning, how he grew up, how he was raised. And then he's projecting the future, or he's projecting what happened in the past as that's what's going to happen in the future. So he can't move forward, and even if he tried, there's nothing driving him forward because the past or the future is going to be more of the past. Does that make sense? What we need to do instead is cut off that ankle bracelet, cut off that ball and chain, so that way you remove the past conditioning. You're no longer tethered by the limitations of the past. And then when that's the case, you're no longer projecting the future as the past. You can actually put what you want instead, your goal, your achievement, your purpose, your mission, and you're going to be pulled forward towards it instead of trying to drag that boulder up a hill. Does that make sense? So we want to clear the past conditioning and create a compelling future to pull you forward. Now, how do we want to do this? We want to identify any blocks that might be holding you back. So ask, why do you not really have what it is that you want? And it's going to give you a list of beliefs that are there or a list of obstacles. And then journal your answers and find out, where are you stuck or where do you feel like you're self-sabotaging? What fear or belief or unresolved emotion could be driving this? And then uncover the root cause. Many of these blocks originate from the past. So if you take a look here, like we don't want to just get rid of something that happened recently. We want to find out when was the root cause. Because if you can get rid of the root cause, the rest of them go away, and you're like, oh wait, I can make a new decision there. So we want to not just treat the symptom, we want to get the root. Number three, we want to release any trapped emotions. A lot of times we're held back not by what we know or not by what we're doing or not doing, but there's a trapped emotion somewhere. So there's a negative emotion running the show like anger, sadness, fear, guilt, or shame. We want to make sure that any of that residual emotion is cleared out so that way you're not acting on baggage, right? And by the way, that would be you're acting or not acting based on emotion, or your emotions are overblown, like they're actually not in proportion to the event because you're not reacting to the event, you're reacting to things that happened in the past. We want to make sure that any of that reactivity is gone so you can have what you're meant to have. Number four, we want to shift any limiting beliefs where possible. So things like I'm not enough or I'll always fail. Well, usually the opposite is true. So I'm capable of achieving anything I commit to. And then we want to install a new framework. So once the old baggage is gone, align your subconscious with your new purpose, with your identity, with your goals, and with by visualizing your best self. Take a look here, right? Like I said, you're the sum total of your past and also what you believe about your future. It's really important that we get rid of that past conditioning because it's like an algorithm. Elon Musk, people like him, people hate him, either way. People were commenting that didn't like him on his X profile, on his Twitter profile. And he's like, I hate to say it to you, right? Like, if you don't want me to be on your feed, stop commenting because if you're commenting, you're telling the algorithm that you want to see more of me, so it's going to give you more. The best way is to get rid of it. Well, we have something without getting into like nerd stuff too much. We have a reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system, it focuses on what we think is important. And if we have baggage from the past, what we're doing is we're trying to avoid it. So in order to keep us safe, it's actually showing us negative circumstances everywhere for us to avoid, but it's not showing us opportunity. So what we're focused on, like where focus goes, energy flows. And if you're focused more on what's wrong, or if you're focused more on the past, or if you're focused more on negative emotions, it actually hurts you long in the long run. So we want to clear that as much as possible. Now, I know that's a lot. This is a lot to do consciously. Um, if you know how to do it, great. I have a free resource. It's an emotional inventory and a limiting beliefs checklist. It has hundreds of limiting beliefs, hundreds of possible trapped emotions that could be there. All you gotta do is check them off, and it gives you a really good assessment on where you're at and where you need some work. So if you want the emotional inventory, comment emotions inventory for the free worksheet, and I'll make sure that I send that to you. But as a self-assessment on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you? 10 being like, I am not driven by the past at all. I've cleared all my conditioning. I'm really able to move forward. And one is like, I am severely hindered by my past. On a level of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, where are you at right now? And what would happen if you were able to clear the conditioning, clear the unconscious autopilot, clear that 7 levels of the beliefs and the values conflict and the identity conflict? What would be possible for you if you cleared all of that conflict and all of that stuff internally so you could really live your best life? What would be possible for you? So comment below. And as a quick recap, first of all, in order to live your best life and make these resolutions stick, first, when you got to know your specific outcome and your purpose. You got to know your why. What's your outcome? What's your purpose? And what's that going to mean to you? What's it going to feel like when you make it happen? That's going to pull you towards what you want. And then, not just wishful thinking, we want to align your purpose with your identity. So who must you become to make that almost automatic? Who's the person you have to become to live that purpose easily? And then finally, the third thing is we want to clear all of the blocks, all of the conditioning, all of the internal conflicts holding you back, like limiting beliefs, trapped emotions. Part of me wants X, part of me wants Y. Once you're aligned, success becomes very, very easy and almost automatic. Not because you don't put the work in. You're still going to put the work in and put the effort in like you normally would, but your effort's going to get a 10 times multiplier on the results. Because instead of you making a little bit of progress and then stalling and sabotaging, it's going to compound. You're going to be able to stick with it. You're not going to fight yourself. You're not going to self-sabotage. So that's really the key. Does that make sense? So I'm here to help you. Like I turned my life around, and I'm not doing that because, I'm trying to brag or I'm trying to think I'm so special. I was literally at rock bottom, and this right here, what I'm talking to you about, changed my life. So I really want to help you release what's holding you back and step into your full potential so you can be the man you're meant to be. And this could be the time for you to break through if you want to. So if you're looking for some help with this, I know we went through this relatively quickly and there's a lot to take in. If you want some help with this, comment below breakthrough. And what I do, I help men become the absolute best version of themselves, no joke, in about 6 hours. I know it's a crazy claim. I know it's like, well, how do you do that? I take 2 hours a day for 3 days. We find the root cause of everything that's holding you back. And then we use release processes and techniques through psychology, through coaching, through hypnotherapy, through NLP. We eliminate the root cause of everything that we found that's holding you back. And then once we do that, instead, we align those 7 levels. We align your purpose with your identity. We align your beliefs and values. We make sure you're completely aligned internally and externally. And then once you are, we set a really easy to follow game plan and a really easy to follow roadmap. So it goes from, something intellectually to something you can live every single day. So it's a 3-step process. We work together for 3 days, 2 hours a day. Number one, we get to the root cause of what's holding you back, and we clear it using release techniques. Number two is we align those 7 levels, your purpose with your identity, with your beliefs and values. And number three, we create a really easy to follow action plan to make that real. And so that's the 3 days. And then we follow up with you for 3 months after that to make sure the change is lasting long term. And really, the majority of it, once you clear the emotions, once you clear the beliefs, you're going to feel like a new man. You're going to feel like a totally different person. It's what I used to lose 80 pounds. It got me completely out of debt. I started making 6 figures in my jobs, in my business again, transform my relationships, transform my health, and it's sustained for years. And I've been doing this for 2 years now. I've worked with over 100, 150 people doing this one-on-one with them at this point. And they'll come to me 6 months, a year later, and the stuff we did 6 months ago, they're still getting residual effects. They're still growing. They're still learning from it. And it's been a really amazing process. So if you want some help with this, comment breakthrough and we'll do this the easy way, right? You can do it this way, do it on paper, do it manually, and this will help you. This is what I did to start. and there's a way to do it even faster. So I hope this was helpful for you. I really want you to step into who you're meant to be this year. If you're looking for some extra help, comment breakthrough. Or if you want the emotional inventory or the 7 levels worksheet, just comment worksheet or inventory, and I'll make sure I get you those worksheets. And let's make this year the best year yet, guys. So continue watching. We're going to have a lot more content here for you. We're here to help you step up to your best self, and I'll talk to you soon. So comment below what's the biggest thing you got from this, and have an outstanding year. And I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.